It's really important that we tie housing together with homelessness. This has not been the case historically. Oftentimes churches are more involved in providing food and basic clothing, things like that. But when it comes to actually ending homelessness, it takes homes. When you look at Acts chapter 4 and what happened in the New Testament, they did not manage poverty. It says that they ended poverty among them. And that's really our goal with our homeless population, that we want to see poverty ended for that person, to see that person begin to see their life turn around. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and that is Dan Davidson. So Dan is the senior pastor of Rose City Church in Pasadena. It's a historic Free Methodist church, and he and his team that they reopened in 2011. He's the co-founder and executive director of Rose City Coffee, a barista training program for homeless and transitional age youth, soon to open as a local coffee shop. Actually, it's already
that's
open.
An old one.
That's an old one. Currently chairing the Faith Community Committee under Pasadena Partnership to End Homelessness. So just a little bit of structure. Every city within LA County or in California works with what's called a COC, Continuum of Care. So we need to look at that continuum from homelessness all the way to getting fully housed. The COC, Continuum of Care, has spas, different spas that are throughout the county. This city is under Spa 3. And that's how you relate to the homeless issues and working closely with Spa 3. But what we have in Pasadena is our own COC. There's only a few cities in the county that have their own COC, like us and Long Beach. So we have a great opportunity to work more directly with the homeless on our own. But Dan has done an excellent job of leading our local faith community that's part of the COC. There's 3 committees. There's a research committee, a housing committee, and our faith community committee. So I've been part of that for a number of years, and Dan is doing an excellent job with this. So I think he has a MDiv from Duke University, and he's going to tell us a little of his own story, which I think is just fascinating. So please give your full attention to Dan. Thank you.
Wonderful to be here, to meet some new friends, but also to see some old ones, and just an opportunity, thankful to share my story. Rudy has shared the story of kind of homelessness in LA and that transition to housing first, and so I just wanted to come and share what it was like for me to experience that transition as a local pastor in Pasadena. So pastor of a church called Rose City Church, very similar to Mountainside here, neighborhood church, just kind of like on the corner of a block in Pasadena by Pasadena City College. And my first experience with homelessness was going to that church to reopen it and realizing that under our awning were a group of youth sleeping there at night. And so that was my first experience with homelessness, was learning how to care for the youth that were sleeping. So you could, the way I would picture it is just to say, I think a very similar model to maybe Mountainside here, but that parish model. What does it mean for the local church, maybe a local pastor, to care for not just the parishioners inside the building, but outside as well? And so we saw the youth sleeping at the church as part of our parishioners, the people we were called to care for, the neighbors we were called to care for. And in that process of coming to engage with them, I began to learn how I've been called, I feel, to help people flourish. And so we tried to do that with the youth. And the first thing we did was provide, as any church would in that kind of old model before we switched over to this housing first model, providing clothing and food and providing shelter. And what that meant then for the youth there at the church was they kind of got to set up their sleeping bags however they wanted outside. And then that continued to grow, and the tents and the drums and the drugs. And I realized all of a sudden that we had gotten way over our head. and trying to care for the youth there. And that was happening because we were getting calls from the police department saying, okay, Pastor, what in the world is taking place at your church outside there? So after about 9 months of trying to help and serve the youth in that way, we realized there's got to be a different way, a better way to do that. So that helped me learn how to start partnering. And so we closed down what we were doing with the youth there, and we helped them find places at the local nonprofits. So in Pasadena, we've got a lot of nonprofits working in the area of homelessness, especially in youth homelessness. So we started to help those youth transition to their programs. But then the place was empty, and we were like, well, what do we do? What's our role? How do we care for the youth that we've been working with in a way that's healthy and sustainable? And again, that was happening right in that transition to kind of the housing first model. And so as we meet with the different nonprofits and recognizing, wow, there's a whole village coming alongside the youth in particular to help them move from the, basically homelessness to a house, and from a house to sustainability with a job, we realized, well, we can find our place in that process. And coming to reopen a church, you work with what you get, and what I had received when I got there was a coffee cart that we couldn't get rid of. No one wanted to buy it, just sat there collecting dust. And we realized, well, we can put this to good use by using it to train the youth in coffee. So found some more partners, some good friends. I don't know if you guys all know Kevin over here, but Kevin was one of our first trainers. Yeah, let's hear it for Kevin. When we started working with the youth and training in coffee, we found wonderful baristas that had excellent coffee experience and willing to give their time and energy. And so Kevin interned and spent a couple of years helping us train some of the youth through the program. We went to downtown LA. We met some awesome coffee people from Handsome Coffee. Not there now. Bado. That's okay. But they trained us in all things coffee. And from there we realized, okay, this is the role we have. This is the way we get to offer our services to help the youth move from where they are to a much, much, much better place. So the one thing I wanted to kind of just, part of sharing that story was to share, start with what you have and start with the partnerships that you have. Because I know when you're looking at all of this stuff of transitioning from an old model to a new model and housing first, and we can't find enough affordable units, then we just feel stuck. Like, what do we do? And we feel like we can't really do much at all. But I think if you just start with the partnerships you have, the resources at your disposal, learn what's happening with the greater network that's taking place, and I think you can kind of find your fit, find your role. And what happened as I was beginning to do that and making those relationships, I was invited by Joe Coletti. I'm sure he's been mentioned here many times today, out of the Office of Urban Initiatives with Fuller, and he started to set up this committee with the city of Pasadena. It's called the Faith Community Committee, and it's a part of our COC, as Jill shared, our continuum of care. So that's the agency of the city that gets all of the federal funding that gets distributed to the different nonprofits for helping with homeless. And there's, Long Beach, Pasadena, and Glendale have all their own, and everyone else is under LA County. So Joe kind of structured everything, and he gave room for the faith communities to come in under the city itself as a committee to help move all of our faith communities from that old model to the new one that Rudy just shared about. So about 4 years ago, I stepped on board with Joe to set up this committee, and that's what we've been doing. We've been gathering the faith communities, the nonprofits, faith-based agencies that are all now making this shift towards housing first. And then we gather once a month to work through the best practices of what it looks like to say yes to this housing first model, right? So the old model was kind of the experience I had with the youth at the church, food, shelter, clothing, things of that nature. This new model is, okay, how do we help find a home for them and then provide the supportive services like job training to help them stay in their homes? So we have a document in your packet here for you. I'm not going to go over all of these things, but look for a page called Comparison of Best Practices. doing on our committee with the city, Gathering the Faith Communities, is basically going through all of these different best practices on ending homelessness. So we as faith communities have been learning about that transition and all the different practices that are happening and how we might be involved and come alongside. And so you can see here there's a list of 12 of them. And honestly, in those last 4 years, we've kind of gone through all 12 in one form or fashion of another. But these would be all of the ones that basically are the practices that have, as Rudy has shared about what they studied in Seattle and New York and different places, that are the best way we can come alongside to help someone find a home and then stay there. And so you've got street outreach, the coordinated entry system. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of these, but just spend time, if you want, looking through them. Or if you have questions, I could answer a question on them. But as a faith community, we working with the city of Pasadena and discovering what these are, the question we kept asking ourselves is, which of these practices is the best one for us as a local church to be involved in? Now, as I look at this list, I realize it's missing the one over these 4 years that we have discovered is the best thing for us as a local church. So, the one not listed here, but for you to write in. Because again, we went through all of them over these last few years. And what we've come to determine is that the best way as a local congregation we can be involved in this housing first model is through homelessness prevention. So you can write that one in there, number 13. Or housing retention. But helping people stay in the homes they currently have is one of the best ways that the local church and faith community can help. There's another document in here, I believe. I think Jill put it in here, or it's on the back side. So if you just flip that over, you're going to see numbers from the homeless count in 2017. We just got our 2018 numbers. And sad to say that in Pasadena, after having experienced a 52% decrease in homelessness in the city of Pasadena from 2011 to 2016, homelessness in the city of Pasadena is now on the rise. So last year in 2017 and again 2018, we've seen now to start to climb up 30%. Which can be very disheartening after many years working in this. But I think what that does is just highlight the importance it is for the local faith communities to get behind homelessness prevention. Because if you look at these numbers, you're going to see it in 2017 we had a total of 575 counted. 228 were counted under the sheltered, 347 counted on unsheltered. Now, when it comes to HUD funding and Measure H and HHH and all of that, that funding gets put to the nonprofits that have the professional services that target those two numbers, the sheltered and the unsheltered. But then there's another number we put on here, the at risk of becoming homeless. And so in Pasadena, we have over 21,000 at risk. So it's not hard to understand why our numbers are starting to climb again. As the rent increases in our city, more and more people are being displaced. And that cycle of homelessness is beginning for many new families. So homelessness prevention then, after these years of going through all these practices, became the number one way we felt called to begin to help see those numbers change once again. So what does the homelessness prevention look like? Well, I'm excited to hear that you guys here at Monrovia are going to be working on that soon. So you guys will be able to tell us, Pastor Josh, what that looks like for Monrovia. But what that looks like in Pasadena is for the local churches to partner. Again, that was my experience of addressing and caring for the youth is the partnership, but to partner with an agency like Union Station Homeless Services, or Door of Hope, or Hathaway Sycamores, or Hillside Youth Moving On, that provides a lot of these, professional services, but to come alongside and to partner and find out how you can volunteer with services that they're providing. Or to partner in another way, which is to kind of form your own, let's say, committee under the city that's shifting and helping the local faith community shift their perspective from the old conventional model of addressing homelessness to this new model focused on housing first. Gathering that group together, working with the city so you all are sharing one common vision and one common goal. So I think that would be another way that you guys could consider partnering together. Then the last thing I wanted to share was just then the story of how the partnerships that we formed in Pasadena impacted myself and Rose City as we begin to continue to be engaged, and we're still trying to find out, okay, what's that best way? We're doing the job training. We realized with all the models that were out there, taking that job training to the next level, so it wasn't just a ministry of the church, but became its own standalone entity, is what gave us the energy to double down and develop what we now have as Rosebud Coffee. So about 5 months ago, we opened our coffee shop so that the youth that we're training can also be employed, and we can continue to train on an ongoing basis now that we have a space and we have the ongoing employment for the staff, for the trainers, for the cafe manager. And so now we have Rosebud Coffee. That's been set up here in Pasadena. That's going to continue to hire the youth. We have one youth that's out of a local high school, continuation school. We have a youth out of APU. And we have a youth that we trained last spring that is hired now. And then we're about to start another round of training with the local nonprofits in about 2 or 3 weeks. So that progression of our experience from just youth sleeping in the church parking lot led us, as we partnered along the way, as we found our way to say yes to that housing first model with the city of Pasadena, developed the friendships we needed, led us to actually open our own cafe that's made this commitment to helping the youth in their homelessness and stay housed. So that gives you kind of just a broad picture of what we've been doing at Rose City, my experience in Pasadena. And the hope that we have that others would consider that kind of partnership and taking their focus of the old transitional, or the old conventional model of addressing homelessness to this new housing first focus. So I'm going to stop there and open it up for any questions that you guys might have on my experience, my story, or any of these practices that I've alluded to. Any questions? Yes?
So these kids are going through your program and they're becoming coffee baristas.
Yes.
So do they since they're all here, do they
Great question. So one of the things that I learned along the way was not to, because of that experience with the youth on the street, not to start there, right? But we had to find our place in the whole process. So we, as a job training, economic development, are at the end. That means the youth we work with are already housed. They have case management. They've got support for education through the nonprofit that's caring for them. So we look for the youth that are making that transition out after they've been already cared for and have all the supportive services behind them. Yeah?
We heard earlier a high percentage of children that have been in foster care.
Yeah.
Do you validate that as well?
Yeah, so the majority of the youth we work with are called transitional aged youth. Transitional aged youth. And they're the youth that have emancipated from the foster system. Most of them in our city, though, get picked up by local nonprofits to help them transition into housing or education, and then job employment as well, and that's where we come along. But yes, yeah. So many of the youth we train have come out of the foster system. Yeah.
When you say picked up by the nonprofits, what do you mean?
As we've shifted to this housing first model, the foster youth get placed in homes, and then they're provided with supportive services to come alongside. It all depends. Each nonprofit is completely different. Most are have access to apartments that the youth will be, or others would know better than I exactly what the housing situation is. My own experience, we had one young guy that was with us, doing really, really well, and then his housing program did move him to another location, different city, lost his connections, lost his community, and even though he had that housing, it created a really terrible situation for him. So the housing piece is still critical even for the youth and the nonprofits to try to keep it as close to home as possible.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome.
In your packet, I have a list of some of those local nonprofits that Dan has been mentioning. One that I know his church is part of is called Imagine LA. It's kind of like aftercare for those that have experienced homelessness. And that enables churches to volunteer and be involved. There's some excellent programs where churches can work with a family and to make sure that they stay housed. Lake Avenue Church, it's amazing what they've done. They have one of the premier homeless prevention programs. They have spent over $95,000 just in the last year to make sure people stay in their homes. So sometimes there's that 1 month when they're struggling and they need a little help to pay their rent before they get into the possibility of homelessness. So they've just done a phenomenal job. I know that the Catholic community, St. Vincent de Paul, that's the main focus of what they do is homeless prevention. So there's some good programs, and we just need to learn about them and partner with them in our churches. I have a little quiz here, but we're going to forego that so that you can see a video. I really want you to see, but I encourage you on your own. These are truly a paradigm shift. What he was talking about, what Pastor Dan was talking about, is a whole different way to think about working with our homeless population.